Hi, everybody. I'm Steve Green for BillWhittle.com, and with me, of course, Bill Whittle and Scott Ott, and this is The Right Angle on Trump, Russia, and now his own son-in-law, Jared Kushner. The Washington Post, guys, they broke this story, I think, on Friday, that Trump's son-in-law and White House insider Jared Kushner attempted back in December to set up a private back channel with the Kremlin. Now, of course, this comes from the Kremlin, but apparently the idea behind this thing was that this back channel couldn't be monitored by the NSA, although I could be monitored by the Kremlin. That part's a little iffy. Although it doesn't seem that anything actually came of this, and of course this is just the latest in a weeks-long series of reports of all sorts of intrigue, perhaps between the Trump White House and Vladimir Putin's Kremlin over in Russia. Scott, I think what bothers me about the Kushner story isn't so much any sort of worry that there's collusion between Trump and Putin. It's the idea that this 36-year-old kid is about to get himself, or at least almost got himself, seriously played by much smarter, much tougher, much older guys over in Moscow. What do you think?
Well, let me just start flat out by saying what disturbs me about the whole story is that the president's son-in-law has a position of such power in the White House, and frankly, that the president's daughter has. I mean, what would we have done to Barack Obama if he had hired his close relatives and put them in top White House posts? We would have Wait, we did crucify him, but we would have really
we had our own reasons, though.
Super duper crucified him. I mean, that's... To me, that's the disturbing thing. Now, as to the merits of the story itself, it's still very cloudy. It's not clear that it was Kushner that made the suggestion. In fact, I've read a recent report this morning that said that, in fact, the Russians may have made the suggestion that they open up a back channel, and Kushner may have just suggested how they do it. The problem, apparently, is not the fact that there's back channel communication, because that's happened in every administration going back as far as we know, but that this channel may have been set up in the interregnum, as they would call it in some other countries, in the period between when Barack Obama was still president of the United States. And so in a sense, you could say that someone in the Trump administration was interfering with foreign policy before Donald Trump became president. I think that's a legitimate question about whether that's a problem. There's no suggestion that anything happened from this so-called back channel or that there were any nefarious motives behind it. And, you know, not that you're going to just say just because Jared Kushner is an orthodox man of faith, he could never do any wrong. But there's no there yet. And I think that we tend to run out ahead of these stories, with the exception, and I'll say this again, I don't think the president of the United States should engage in this kind of nepotism. I think it would have been smart to keep, his son-in-law as a guy he could pick up the phone and chat with every once in a while, but not put him in such a position where he is calling shots as far as foreign policy goes from the White House.
Yeah, leave that. Rex Tillerson, he's got a really good team there. I definitely want to leave that to the pros. But Scott, the Washington Post headline, which I meant to read you a minute ago, was Jared Kushner trying to secretly talk to the Russians is the biggest billow of smoke yet. Now, the Washington Post is seeing smoke everywhere. Are you?
Not yet. See, I keep waiting for them, and you guys remember me. I'm the guy who didn't want Donald Trump nominated. I'm the guy who didn't want him elected. Certainly didn't want Hillary Clinton either. But, so I'm no Trump defender. But I think you've got to be fair with people and say, okay, what actually happened? If H.R. McMaster, the National Security Advisor, stands up and says there was nothing inappropriate with a conversation that he overheard in the White House between Donald Trump and the Russians, then until there's contrary evidence to that fact, you've got to take them at their word. So what is it that actually happened? Now, the other thing that threatens to lance the leftist balloon is that Jared Kushner has said, call me before Congress. I want to talk about this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hey, Bill, it sounded like you wanted to jump in there. So instead of me setting up a question that you're going to say whatever you want to anyway, why don't you just say whatever you want?
Well, all the leftists who are screaming about nepotism in government, I wonder how many of them were out there going, JFK's great and Bobby makes a great attorney general, and he's going to be inheriting the baton as soon as JFK retires. Then we go to Bobby. Then we have Teddy, who's also in the Senate, who's also a close confidant, and then we'll hand off to Teddy. So please spare me and spare me about this with Bill Clinton and all. Hillary Clinton being co-president essentially during the first Clinton administration. I get to say the first and last Clinton administration. That's got a nice ring to it.
Amen.
So
Hey,
first of all,
Chelsea's in the wings, Bill. Chelsea's in the wings.
Yeah, she can fly away in her wings is what she can do. So there's that. Then the second thing is what's inappropriate. Now, Scott's point about interfering with existing U.S. diplomacy is a valid point. However, there seems to be overwhelming evidence that Barack Obama was spying on pretty much everybody. Pretty much everybody. And we know that if the IRS can be weaponized against the American people back in, when was that, 2009, 10, something like that? Yeah. 11. If the IRS can be weaponized, if the FBI can be weaponized, then surely the NSA can be weaponized. And if I'm an incoming president and I believe that the sitting president is spying on me, spying on everybody, and has this sort of deep government structure in the intelligence and State Department, especially the State Department, it doesn't seem like a bad idea to me to be looking at having a line, that's you would think you would go through the State Department in order to get the secure line, right? But if Donald Trump knows about enough about this as I do, and I don't claim to have any inside information, then the State Department would be the last line I would want to go through if I'm looking for secure communications. So again, I don't see where the there is. I don't see where the story is, but I can tell you this. They are going to say the words Donald Trump and Russia in every sentence they possibly can between now and 2020. They're never going to stop. And if these progressives had been this much against Russia earlier, then we would have won the Cold War in 1975 instead of 1990.
Hey, Steve, can I just throw in one thing that I
sure.
forgot? There is a story here, perhaps. And my understanding, I'm not sure, I may have misunderstood what you said. But I didn't see the original story about this coming out of the Kremlin. I saw this coming out of leaked U.S. intelligence from channels that were being monitored. So somebody in our intelligence operations were monitoring the Russians' communication and got word of this as a result of that. To me, that's a story. Who is it that is leaking the intel that is being gathered on our foreign adversaries and making that public just so that they can cause political damage to somebody? Now, I'm sure that secret source whistleblower is feeling proud of himself because he's saving the country, from betrayal by Jared Kushner. But I think that's a legitimate story as well.
It certainly is. And when you say the words deep state, you should probably whisper them. Listen, folks, this story is interesting. Let me
just clarify. I just want to clarify.
Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
I'm not saying that there's a cabal that meets in black robes in a star chamber deep underneath, the Washington Monument. What I'm referring to here is the bureaucratic tendrils that have infected every aspect of it. There's no question that the bureaucracy, which is in fact what runs this government, we're a bureaucracy. And
he just wants to say kudzu, and he can't bring himself to say it.
Those people are overwhelmingly leftist, and needless to say, I think they're very biased against a guy who's at least saying anyway he wants to cut the federal government.
Yeah, it certainly is. Let me tell you what's going on here. Where there's smoke, there's fire, but I don't see the smoke, and I really don't see the fire because there are policy things that President Trump could and would be doing if he were in cahoots or under Putin's thumb or anything like that. He could be looking at ways to restrict American fracking. He could be recognizing Russia's illegal annexation of Crimea that President Obama properly did not recognize back in 2014. He could be loosening the sanctions on various Russian bigwigs and easing the restrictions we placed on their economy and let them return to some real growth. There are all sorts of things President Trump could be doing if he were working with the Russians. On the other hand, we have President Obama telling Medvedev, however you pronounce his name, in 2012 that I'll have more flexibility after my reelection, pass this on to Vladimir. We had the Clintons, who the New York Times reported in 2015 were receiving huge sums of money to their foundation after they brokered a deal that turned over 20% of America's uranium output to the Russians. And then we've got Barack Obama trying to hack this election in favor of Hillary Clinton that Glenn Reynolds, Instapunit, who I write for on a daily basis, had in his USA Today column just this week. So really, what we're looking at here, all of this talk about Trump and Russia is the ballsiest act
Yeah.
of deflection I think I've seen in 30 plus years of watching politics. It's really a sight to behold. And that's the right angle on Trump and Russia, at least for now, because if there is collusion going on between the White House and the Kremlin, I want to know about it. So keep digging. If there's meat there, we'll find it eventually. And you know what? Thanks for watching. This is made possible by the paying members at BillWhittle.com. They make this happen. And you know what? We like it when you like our videos, but we love it when you share them. So why don't you do that for us, please?
And subscribe.
Please. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.
Remember, where there's smoke, there's meat.
Smoked meat.
Meat.